Hello, this is Martin Brossman, KI4CFS,
I'm Carl Davis, W8WZ.
and Carl, how long have you been in amateur radio, you said?
I'm 42 and I've been a ham since I was 15 years old. So well over 25 years, most of my life.
I wanted to ask you, what is an Elmer? Now, I know the answer, but many people don't realize this is a resource. And the first Elmer I had was Dick Bitner, which is a silent key and very well respected in the community.
Yes.
So I'd like to start for people who've heard that word and not sure what it means. Have you define it?
Sure. So it means mentor or guide or someone who's more experienced, who takes a new person kind of under their wing and helps them get on the right path. Peer-to-peer learning. And I've had many in my life. I couldn't even begin to list all of them. The term Elmer, I think, comes because the details will be a bit off. At some point in time, someone wrote a magazine article where they talked about their mentor, and his name happened to be Elmer. And so they said in that article, we should all be an Elmer, and so that's how the name kind of stuck. And that's why in ham radio circles, we call a mentor an Elmer. And, there's many ways to do it. And, you don't have to be a long time experienced ham to do it either. You just have to know something that the next guy doesn't. And I have been Elmered by people who have come up after me too. I don't know much about satellites or digital modes or, the newer things that weren't on my tests. When I took my tests, we didn't have these digital modes that are currently in existence. So wasn't a thing. I learned about things that aren't on the test today, but the stuff that's on the test today, I never studied. So the only way I know about them is because someone taught me. And so he might be a newer ham, but he knows how to do something that I don't. And so Elmering really means mentoring and helping each other. Traditionally, it's a more experienced person helping a new one, but it's a two-way street. New people can help older folks. And in this hobby, we all help each other.
And ways to find it to me is join a local ham radio club.
Yeah. Join a club, get on the air, talk to people. At RARS, we have the Raleigh Amateur Radio Society here in Raleigh. We have an intentional group that meets at least pre-pandemic and will when the COVID's over, that meets monthly for new hams to attend. And it's intentionally designed for new people to learn the skills they need to get a station operating safely and effectively. A lot of clubs have programs like that. When I was a kid studying for my advanced license, you needed to know trig. I was 14, 15, 16. I didn't have trig yet. I hadn't had trig. That was coming up. But in order to pass the advanced test, I needed to know trig. So I knew that there were these engineers coming home from I lived in Detroit, so they were coming home from the auto industry every day at like 5. I could get on 2 meters and ask them to explain these equations to me. And I'm sure I annoyed them, but one of them, Bob Cade, NSR, who's a silent key now, was so kind. He said, come over to the house after dinner, I'll explain it to you. So after dinner, I'd come over to Bob's house and he'd sit down with the notebook and pencil and he'd explain the trigonometry to me that I needed to pass the advanced test. I met him over 2 meters, just talking to him over the air. I said, this guy he's an engineer. He's smart. He knows this stuff. And he was kind enough to help me out. So we meet each other over the air. These days, you can meet Elmers online, in Facebook communities, Twitter, all of the different ways that ham radio operators are meeting outside of the airwaves, but on the airwaves in person. My favorite way, though, is still, like you said, to be involved with the local club. And meet the people there who are, more experienced and have the experience to share.
For me, I had joined RARS, getting into it, and then I met Dick Bitner, and it was so excited when I got back into a hobby, found there's a program that RARS has in honoring Dick Bitner.
Yes.
And I realized, wow, that was the guy that mentored me. And I remember inviting me over to the house and explaining his antennas and information and just we had dialogues on the air and over the phone and in person. And it wasn't like he said, I'll be your Elmer. He was just helpful and answered questions. And that's to me how it can evolve. And the other thing that I think is important for new hams is we're look for opportunities where people give you feedback, and sometimes someone might give you a correction on the radio, and you might go, "Oh, I've been criticized," and say, "No, they're actually helping you understand it, so you enjoy it and be appreciated by other people because they might have come from some of the military." Came from kind of a Roger and using other terminology, and
Sure.
we don't have to do that here, and so
Yeah.
one thing I advise is notice someone that might give you some advice and see if they'd help out. I know Alan AB40Z has just been terrific in answering questions, and but also let them challenge you a little bit. Let them encourage you to do something and step out of the box and go for it. And I think the big thing is understand this is a community with a long time mentoring support, which we don't see in business necessarily,
That's true.
society, and other forms. I mean, my stepson is older, and like he was the generation that the boomers really left out in helping in business, and this is a place where if he wanted to be involved, I know there'd be someone that would help out. And so that's why I wanted to bring up the concept of Elmer, that it does exist. Don't expect it to be a light switch. You need to give some. You need to allow others contribute to you, which means you aren't defensive or overreact to ideas and suggestions. And no, this is part of this culture. This is part of my commitment to ham radio whenever I can as well. Someone will say, "Is that a CB?" And I'm sitting there, I might have it at lunch, and I don't get offended or
Right.
what. I go, "No, this is amateur radio. It's quite different." And I kind of explain it. And I think being an Elmer is kind of a commitment to mentoring, supporting, but also learning from others as well, don't you?
Oh yeah, it's a never-ending learning thing. That's one. This is a hobby that keeps learning. The technology keeps changing. I mean, I've got a 7300 sitting here next to a Johnson Viking 1, 1949, 20, what, 15, 16 when that came out.
Right.
Both amateur radios, but the technology is just so different, and we have to keep learning. The technology is evolving. The stuff that this can do wasn't around. You might have known everything there was to know about radio in 1949, but the technology is not where it was in 49. So as a hobby, we're technical. It's a technical hobby, and that we need to keep updating and learning the new things. And that's part of the beauty and fun of the hobby is this constant learning. It never ends. I mean, there's never a day where you learn everything there is to know, because tomorrow there will be new technology and new ways and improved ways. And we're learning more about old things. The theories around grounding that I learned to get my licenses have now been improved upon. We now understand grounding better. And that's something that's been around since the days of Marconi, and we're still learning about it, which is awesome. And it is, so it's not a hobby where like, I got my license, now I know everything, I don't need to learn anymore. It's a hobby where I'm involved with the technology. I'm going to keep learning and going with it. The only thing that I would say, in addition to the person receiving the feedback, should be receptive to it and know that it's helpful and that they'll be a better ham and have a better station for receiving good feedback, helpfully. If somebody says your audio is too low, an example, a lot of people will get on the repeater and they'll be nervous and they'll hold their radio way out here and they'll talk in a low voice because they're shy. And then we can't hear them, and they don't know we can't hear them. Like, why aren't those guys answering me? And finally, it's helpful when somebody says, your audio is too low. We can't hear you. Speak up, speak closer to the microphone. Without that feedback, you'd never know. You think those guys don't like me.
Right.
So that's helpful. The other thing I'll say, I'll speak to I'm a member of QCWA, so I'll put on my old timer hat and I'll speak to my fellow old timers. We need to be kind and gracious in giving the advice as well, polite.
Yeah. Right.
And so it's one thing to say, station calling, your audio is very low. Please speak louder into the microphone and we can hear you better. That's polite. Well, there's some idiot we can't hear.
Right.
Not polite.
That's not polite. Yeah, right.
Way to give the feedback. And so on those of us who are giving the feedback too, there's a burden on us to do it politely and kindly and effectively. And ham radio has a great system of how we give feedback. We have signal systems, so we learn those. So to some degree, if I tell you you're a 5.5, you know what I mean. Versus you tell me you're a 3.2, I know it. We have an RST signal system. We have an entire way that we've developed to give each other feedback that's helpful, so that we can make the adjustments to our stations. I run all this vintage gear. I often get reports that I have problems. Old gear breaks. You're chirping, you're drifting, your audio's got RF in it, you're off frequency. I need to know that so I can make the repairs to this stuff to keep it going. And so appreciate that. And those of us who are sharing it need to do it kindly and politely, and with a good spirit of wanting to help the other person succeed. And for the most part, hams do that.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thanks for taking a moment on it. I appreciate it. And I'll put the links to RARs that you're involved in and other resources you give me below, so check those out. And I appreciate it and look forward to talking to you on the air as well. Martin, KI4CFS.
Carl, W8WZ, 73.
Take care.